Thank you. Thank you very much for joining us today. I'm delighted to introduce Dr. Manoj Krishna. Manoj is the author of Understanding Me, Understanding You, and the founder of HappierMe, which is an app that he's going to take you throughout this session. So how this is going to work, Manoj is going to speak for around 30 minutes. He's then going to take you through the app for around 15 minutes, and then we'll have around 15 minutes at the end for questions and answers. If you have any questions throughout the session, we'll get to those at the end. But if you just use the chat and Q&A box as well, I'll put those to Manoj at the end of the session. But I'll hand over to Manoj now, and I'll be back at the end for questions. Over to you, Manoj.
Okay, well, thank you very much. I'm just going to share my screen, let's get started. So, I last spoke at the SFCA conference about 7 years ago. And I remember then having some really great interactions. We talked about stress then, and the problem hasn't gone away. This was a version of the talk I gave at the World Education Summit last year. And today we're going to be talking about empowering students and staff to manage their own mental health. Our website is happierme.app, and there's my email, manoj@happierme.app, if you'd like to get in touch. My background is I used to be a spine surgeon. For 30 years, I left medicine to start this project. Our mission is to help people lead happier lives and to make the world a better place. And where better to start than in education? Okay. So we're going to be talking today about 4 things: the challenge of mental health, how we can empower people to manage it. By the way, this talk is aimed for both students and staff. How this change can be implemented, and how is this going to help students, staff, and society? As Johnny mentioned, I'll speak for about half an hour, show you the app for 15 minutes, and then we'll do a Q&A for 15. So before we get going, I want to tell you a story about a girl and a boy. I was in Sheffield talking at a sixth form college to a group of 17 and 18-year-olds. And we're just talking about simple things that I'm going to show you today. And in the middle of that talk, a girl got up from the back row, I remember very clearly, burst into tears and ran out of the room. And I was really puzzled as to what to do next. The teacher who was in the room didn't say anything, so I just kind of kept going. But at the end, the teacher told me that a year before that, or a few months before rather, she'd broken up with a boy, and that boy had taken his own life. Now, I can sit here and for the whole hour tell you story after story that I've come across in my 9-year journey through education, where young people have succumbed and taken their own lives. But that's the extent of the crisis that we're up against. And what I'm going to offer today are long-term solutions that can empower people to manage all these challenges without going under. So here's the challenge. 29% of teens have a mental health problem, 22% are thinking of suicide, 17% are self-harming. 1 in 5 are getting bullied, 1 in 3 suffer from anxiety, and 4 in 5 are stressed, and they all tell me this impacts their learning. Of course, on the other hand, the teachers are actually probably worse off. Because this is the Teacher Wellbeing Index. 72% of teachers say they're stressed. More than half are considering leaving the profession, and they're saying stress impacts teaching. 82% say poor student behavior is impacting their mental health, and about half have difficulty sleeping. So in that school, we have students on the one hand, teachers on the other, both with mental health issues. And of course, learning and teaching are all impacted, and so is behavior and so on. And the more stressed we are, you know how we're easily triggered, much more reactive. And of course, that atmosphere in the whole institution then gets affected as well. Now, once the students leave and go into society, employers are saying their education hasn't equipped them with the soft skills they need to succeed at work. And they don't really care whether you've got a degree from Oxford or Hull. What they're really interested in is your ability to solve problems, get on with people, manage your own mental health, cope with pressure. And of course, this is needed now more than ever because uncertainty in the age of AI is everywhere. So these soft skills are not being taught at the moment in education. And once these students reach society as a whole, these are the problems we face. 1 in 6 have an addiction issue. Half our relationships are breaking down. 60% of us are lonely, and so on. There's a lack of kindness, civility, and of course, a lack of peace. Now, this is not a doom talk, but imagine if there was a single solution rooted in learning to address all of these challenges faced by both students and staff. You see, many of these problems that I've highlighted begin in our thinking, in how our mind automatically responds to its challenges. And we have no awareness, by the way, of that reaction. We're convinced our reaction is the only way in which we can respond. So, a deeper understanding of our own mind could help us avoid and overcome these problems much more easily. Take the analogy of the heart. The more we studied the heart, the more we could find solutions to the problems that come from there. Similarly, the more we understand our own mind, we can avoid and overcome problems that begin in our thinking. But our education right now is only about the world around us and not ourselves. And as a result of that, we don't know how to deal with the challenges that come from our own thinking, from the way our mind reacts to the world. And this imbalance in education is perhaps one of the reasons why we have these huge problems for which there doesn't seem to be an easy answer. So teaching this understanding of yourself, let's call it self-knowledge, is not complicated. It's really simple. I've been doing it for 9 years with children talking from the age of 10 upwards. You start with a simple breathing exercise because the mind quietens down. And then you help people become aware of their thoughts and feelings without judging them as right or wrong. And then they're curious as to what's going on. Why do I think and feel this way? And the more we learn about ourselves and how our minds function, the more we can avoid and overcome all the problems I've highlighted. So I'm going to now show you 10 practical ways in which this can be applied to solve the problems you see every day. And this applies equally to students and to the staff. Okay, so the first thing, let's talk about social media. We're all conditioned by our experiences. That means I'm looking at social media today, and tomorrow it becomes my opinion. So we're influenced by what we're seeing and reading, and that shapes our thinking, beliefs, opinions, and so on. But our mind is also comparing all the time, and therefore I think I'm less than others. There's a feeling of envy, a pressure to conform. I don't like my body, and so on. And lots of children don't like to come to school. By the way, do you know the shocking stat I read the other day, Department of Education? 26% of secondary school students in the UK are persistently absent. That means they're absent for more than 10% of the time. So anyway, so understanding our conditioning, understanding the process of comparison going on in our own mind can help us then have a much more intelligent relationship with social media. So I'll tell you a conversation I had with a girl or a group of children in a local school. So I start off by asking them, how come a phone makes them feel all these things? And I tease out of them, by the way, the root word of education, educere, is to draw out, it's not to put in. So you tease out of them that, yeah, the reason they feel all this is because their mind is comparing and they're not aware of it. So my question was, how would your life change if you were in charge of your own mind and you only compared yourself with others when it served you? Okay. And this girl at the back, there was a long pause because nobody had ever asked them that question. And this girl at the back, she said, she was only 13. She said, I would be free. So this understanding is simple, but the impact can be profound. And I think it needs to be part of education. What about stress? You see, stress is just the automatic way our mind reacts to our challenges. And the more we understand ourselves, that puts us in charge of that reaction. And for example, stress is just the difference between how things are and how we want them to be. So the more we can accept things as they are, the more our stress can dissolve. And this, of course, can reduce self-harm as well. Here's a 1-minute video from the app on uh, how we could approach stress in a different way.
Imagine how your life could change if you could be less stressed. How can wisdom, which comes from understanding ourselves, help? If we're sitting an exam, our mind assumes that the exam is causing stress. Or if we're stuck in a traffic jam, we assume it's the traffic jam that's making us stressed. If we use our wisdom, we can see that stress is just an automatic reaction from our thinking to an external event, because not everyone is stressed and not to the same degree. It is a difference between how things are and how we want them to be. We seem to have no control over that reaction. To be free of stress, we can either change the event or change our reaction to it. Often we cannot change the event or another person, but we can change how we react. To do that, we need to understand why our mind reacts in the way that it does. That journey of understanding ourselves opens a door to wisdom, which can help us avoid and overcome stress. You can discover this wisdom for yourself because it's already there inside you, and it can be life-changing. Stress affects up to 80% of us and impacts our health and our happiness, so you are not alone. Living with wisdom can bring lasting freedom. Now, wouldn't that be amazing?
Now, we use the word wisdom here, but you can use self-knowledge, you can use emotional intelligence, inner intelligence. It doesn't matter what you call it, but it's basically understanding yourself and how your mind works.
Imagine how your life could change.
Okay, what about anxiety? Anxiety is about 40% in young people, 20 to 40% in the population. So by understanding the nature of fear, we can use it so it protects us from harm, but we can avoid anxiety from overthinking and imagining the worst. By the way, the images you're seeing here are from the modules within the app, which cover these subjects. So here's another video for you to
Wouldn't our
watch.
lives be amazing if we could live without anxiety? It causes so much suffering, and we seem to have no control over it. But wisdom can help us be free. When you're afraid or anxious and you distract yourself and think of something else, your anxiety goes away, suggesting that it's a product of your thinking. Our mind assumes our anxiety comes from the outside, from exams or work or a lack of money. But if we use our wisdom to look carefully, we can see that it's just a reaction from our thinking, because everyone's not affected in the same way. Our fears control and shape our lives in ways that we're not aware of, and they are a product of our unconscious thinking. Understanding ourselves and how our minds work opens the door to wisdom, and this allows us to understand the root cause of fear in our thinking. With this understanding, anxiety can be prevented and more easily overcome, and this can set us free to live life to the full. After all, the ultimate freedom is freedom from fear, and this can be life-changing. 1 in 5 adults and 1 in 3 students suffer from anxiety, so you are not alone. Begin your own journey to wisdom and discover how you can be free.
Okay. And the same thing goes with addiction. So understanding what's behind our addictions to vaping, to phone, smartphone addiction is now 37%, I think, and so on. So understanding our inner restlessness, conditioning that means everyone around me is vaping, so I automatically start vaping. And if I'm suffering inside, and as you know, stress is so common, and I need some kind of way to numb that feeling I have. So again, vaping or some other form of addiction, whether it's gambling or phones or pornography or something, can help us distract ourselves. So here's another 1-minute video which explains this in more detail.
Imagine the suffering that could be avoided and how our lives could be transformed if we could avoid and more easily overcome our unhelpful habits and addictions to food, alcohol, drugs, the internet, shopping, gambling, and so on. How can wisdom help us avoid these problems and deal with them? The problem of addiction begins in our thinking, and so the answer also lies there. By understanding what makes our mind, which is otherwise so intelligent, slide into addiction and not be able to stop itself, despite knowing the dangers of it. If we can use our wisdom to go deeper and understand why, perhaps addiction could be prevented, and prevention is so much easier. One of the factors behind addiction is our need to escape from our stress and our emotional pain. Alcohol and drugs are one way of numbing this pain. Another reason is the way we are unconsciously influenced by our environment. If many people around us are taking drugs and seem to have a good time, we want that for ourselves. We don't want to be left out of the group. Addiction affects 10 to 15% of us, so you're not alone. It impacts our physical and mental health and affects all our loved ones. Understanding our conditioning and using our wisdom to deal with emotional pain can help us avoid addiction and make the changes we need to live happier lives.
Okay. And the same understanding can be applied then to have meaningful relationships. There's a long-term Harvard study which followed people for 80 years. And the one thing that was common, that was important for people for their happiness, was the quality and depth of their relationship. Much more than money and fame and career and everything, it was the quality and depth of our relationships. And as you know, this is a skill that is not taught in education right now. But understanding ourselves can help us to understand others better, and this can help us have relationships without conflict. Of course, this self-understanding also contributes to our happiness, because the key to our happiness lies in ourselves, but our mind assumes it comes from the outside. So our mind takes what we already have for granted. So once we know that, and we focus on what we don't have, once we know that, we can be more grateful, or we can develop a positive attitude, or not compare ourselves with others, and be comfortable with who we are. All of these can contribute to our happiness, and we have modules on all of this in the app. Here's another video.
Wanting to be happy is at the core of being human and our deepest need. When asked what we want from life, most people say they want to be happy. That is why we want to be rich and famous, why we get married, have children, go on holiday, and buy things. But happiness is difficult to find sometimes, so how can wisdom help? A deeper understanding of ourselves helps us to live with wisdom and explore what gets in the way of being happy. Consider one example. Our mind assumes we're unhappy because of our circumstances. But how come others in the same situation as us are happier? When we use our wisdom to understand why we are unhappy, we realize that our mind often takes what it already has for granted and wants what it doesn't have, and thinks that when we get that, we'll be happy. Instead, we can use our wisdom to be grateful for what we do have, lower our expectations, and enjoy all the simple things in life, like friends and nature, and doing what we love. We can then discover this happiness for ourselves right now.
And of course, emotional intelligence comes from learning and understanding and managing our own emotions. And this can help us deal with anger and loneliness, make us more resilient. And as we know now, all the research is showing that long-term success depends so much more on emotional intelligence than your grades in school or your degrees from university. And it helps prepare young people and ourselves for the challenges of life ahead. By exploring these subjects of loss and failure, we can meet life's challenges without going under and be able to overcome them. And again, there's so many stories of people who, faced with a failure in their career, suddenly go under, or faced with a loss of some kind, go under, as what the story I said right at the beginning. This self-understanding also helps us make better decisions for ourselves, because behind all the decisions we make is a soup of emotions. It could be our fear, our conditioning influences, and all of this stops us from thinking clearly. So the more we can manage and understand our emotions, the better decisions we can make for our lives around our careers, food, drink, drugs, all of that. And lastly, it helps us to be more kind, because kindness, is the glue that holds relationships together. And relationships are the foundation of our own long-term happiness. So we need to communicate this, the importance of kindness. It's not something you do for somebody else. It's actually in your own best interest. And of course, the more we understand ourselves, it's easier to understand others and have compassion for them. So it needs to be a priority in all our lives. And if we can bring this culture of kindness into schools, then we can create a kinder society. The other day, a senior surgeon told me, Manoj, we've been taught all through medical school to be kind to our patients, but we've never been taught how to be kind to ourselves and to each other. And you'll see that in all organizations where you may work, wherever you are in the world. So here are is a summary of some of the things, some of the benefits of this self-knowledge. It can help you be happier, learn better, be mentally healthy, emotionally intelligent, avoid addiction, have deeper friendships, feel less lonely, navigate social media with intelligence, succeed in life, and of course, be more kind to yourself and to others. This can also help boost learning, because schools are all about grades and the focus is on grades. But imagine if you've got a mind on fire and you're sitting listening to a teacher talking to you, nothing is going in. So unless you're happy, so children who are happier learn better and they have fewer behavioral problems. And if you have less behavioral problems, of course, the teachers then are much less stressed as well. And this can help you succeed in life. So how can we do this? I think the first thing is to make space in the curriculum. And you've got to prioritize this. Even if it's just, I want better grades for my school, helping kids manage their own mental health has to be a priority, because that's going to impact grades. So for that, we have to make some space. We can use online resources. I'm going to show you around the app in a minute. But the app on its own may not be enough. What we really need are children to engage with it. So group discussion. So schools don't have to do anything. They just have to facilitate the group discussions from occurring between the students. And we have an online journal. Self-reflection, I've found, is the key to transformation. Information on its own doesn't bring this change on the inside. For example, I could tell you your mind is comparing, that's why you feel envious. It doesn't make any difference. But when you observe what your mind is doing moment to moment, when the envy is rising in you, and you notice your mind is comparing, that's when the change starts to happen. Of course, there are familiar arguments I hear all the time. There's no space in the curriculum. I'm a physics teacher. How can I teach this? Well, I just say, look, this is about being human. It's no other expertise is needed. And you see, we humans are amazing when we set our minds to do something. 400,000 engineers worked together to put Neil Armstrong on the moon in 1969. This, by comparison, is nothing. So if we change our mindset to how can we, rather than why can't we can make this happen. And I like these two quotations. Nelson Mandela said, everything seems impossible until it's done. And this Aboriginal elder who I met in Australia, and he told me something which has inspired me all my life, that traveler, there's no path. Paths are made by walking. So if you're interested, we can begin a journey of walking together and seeing what can be achieved. So I'm going to pause here and show you around the app now. That's my email again, manoj@happierme.app, if you'd like to begin a conversation. And our website is HappierMe.app. happier.app. So I'll just quickly show you around the website to start with. So that's the website. It's, oh, sorry, that's our staging site. Let me just change it. Yeah. So this is the website. And there are two sections, HappierMe for adults and teens. Here are some testimonials from users from around the world. And yeah, this diagram's worth looking at because what we're trying to do is create one solution for a happier life. So we have resources that address mental health, relationships, work, addiction, emotional intelligence, and the well-being of the family, which is why I'll show you we have a separate section for teenagers. To find out more about how we can help education, for example, we have a separate section for education. It's got some of these stats I've mentioned today, and different ways in which this work can help. There's also a separate section for teenagers because we've got a separate section for teenagers inside the app. So all the resources for them are here. Okay. So once you are, if you're interested, you can begin with the website and click on HappierMe for adults or teens, or there's a free trial available, and you can get going. Then you'll come to this screen. So this is the HappierMe app for adults. And if you go to the menu, the first item is the app for teenagers. You can see it on your desktop, but also on your phone. And right at the top is a search bar. You can type for anything. So say you're thinking of suicide. All our resources on suicide prevention and self-harm are immediately then accessible by you. And as I said, 22% of teens are now thinking of suicide every year. That's from the CDC in Atlanta. Then there's a section called Feel Better Now. And let's take anxiety or stress. Let's start with stress. So 80% of us are stressed, whether you're a student or teacher, it doesn't matter. So the first thing we need to do is help you put the fire out. So there are breathing exercises, meditations, short and long videos, and a mini podcast to help you feel better. But then we invite you, and this is where the app is different, to go deeper, to study the subject of stress in more detail so you understand why your mind reacts in that way. So, for example, if you go into the causes of stress, yes, there are many external causes. By the way, I love this quote from Byron Katie, that it's not the problem that causes our suffering, it's how we think about it. There are many podcasts, and you can also read the text of that there. We have an online journal where we ask users a question. They enter the answers here, and it'll be stored in their online journal. So in addition to the external factors, there are many internal factors also that we're not aware of that are responsible for our own stress. So, for example, it could be our conditioning, which means all our past influences. So I want the dishwasher stacked this way because that's how I grew up, and you want it stacked another way. And that difference is enough to create stress. But once I realize, it's just my conditioning and your conditioning, and we're at war with each other, I could realize it doesn't matter, and I could let that go. Not saying we can let it go each time, but these are some of the factors that can influence the stress we experience. Or, for example, our mind is comparing all the time and we're not aware of it. And if we were in charge of our own mind, we could compare ourselves with others only when it served us. Or, for example, I asked a student, I said, how much of your time do you think you spend worrying about what others are thinking about you? And she said, all the time. I said, how much of your stress is caused by that? And she said, about 80%. I said, suppose you were in charge and you didn't think about what others were thinking about you. How would your life change? And she said, I would be free. I said, are you aware that this is what your mind is doing and this is what's creating your stress? And she said, no, I'm not. So I'd encourage you to go through this section. There's a lot there. But at the end of it, we offer 14 ways in which you can respond to stress with your own wisdom or inner intelligence. And we help you to develop that for yourself. So it's what we're trying to do is to help people develop their own inner intelligence rather than telling them. It's not like a menu of do this and that. Okay. Now there's a daily practice. So it's a skill, this inner intelligence or emotional intelligence. So for example, you start off with a daily check-in. Say, I'm feeling anxious today, and the journal asks you why, and you might say, I've got an exam. You save that to your journal, but then the app is going to give you all the resources we have to deal with that anxiety today. So that's the daily check-in. There's a daily inspiration. This is one of our coaches in the app. So John Dee's talking about happiness. Here's just, it's 1 minute. I'll play it for you.
Hi, this is John Dee for HappierMe. And I was thinking about all the stuff I wish I had known a long time ago. I think I would have had a happier life. But now you can. Because one of the things I learned is things don't make us happy. We think they might. We're told they might. The advertisers tell us that we will. But then we get it. And happiness is fleeting. Because you know what? Things don't make us happy. We do. It's our choice, how we look at it, and the meaning we make. And that is happy to know. And now you know.
So these are just less than a minute, but we have coaches from around the world we have trained who are part of the platform, and they offer these 1 minute nuggets. And then there's a breathing exercise, a question of the day, like do we tend to see the best in people or focus on their flaws? There's a quotation. This is from Jung: everything that irritates us about others can lead us to a better understanding of ourselves. And a meditation and a challenge. So that's the daily practice. And now there are 8 broad topics that we can explore, not just mental health, but also work, relationships, and so on. So I'll just take one of them, take work and leadership. These are all the modules we have on work and leadership. So there's work, leadership, communication, bullying. By the way, bullying is much more common than we realize. It's far more than the 1 in 5 reported in the newspapers. Relationships is a huge module on relationships. And diversity, kindness, dealing with feedback, critical feedback is so important. Lots of young people just don't know how to do that. Their life stories, guided questions, which is like a mini coach in your pocket, short videos, podcasts, library of our past events we've hosted. So finding your purpose in life and guided meditations. And like that, all of these 8 topics have the same amount of depth. This is my favorite part of the app. It's been put together with a head teacher, actually, who's one of our collaborators, Dominic Curran. And what we're doing here is creating small bite-sized exercises, 5 minutes a day, to help you understand yourself, your thoughts, your emotions in a much better way. So for example, noticing your thoughts is a 9-day challenge. On day 3, you might learn that your mind is reactive. And so when you're being reactive, you know the other person's also reactive. So it's not a good time to make any good decisions at that time. You'll make bad ones. Or our mind assumes what we think is true, but it may not be true. And just that ability to question our assumptions helps us to navigate life in a much better way. Or how a thought triggers an action, like you pick up the phone without even noticing why you did that. Or our mind is judging all the time. And once you see that and you realize, I don't need to judge people all the time. I'll judge when I need to. And that brings a tremendous freedom. Or how our thought patterns repeat themselves. So if I notice the same pattern is repeating, then I pause and say, what can I learn? And that's the key question. What can I learn from observing what's happening in my own mind. So I might learn that my thought patterns are repeating themselves. None of this, by the way, that we're talking about is to be taken as gospel unless someone sees it clearly for themselves. For example, our mind likes to generalize, ginger head people are like this, or blondes are like that, or people with brown skin are like this, or black skin are like that, and so on. So that's how all our prejudices form too. And just realizing this is what our mind is doing to us allows us to be in charge and brings freedom. So these are the awareness exercises. This is just a magazine which showcases different bits of the app. You can track your progress. There's a wellness score. You get some points. Okay. On the Explore page, here are all our coaches from around the world. Davis is in France, Sakshi's in India, John Dee's in the US, Maria's in Portugal. She used to be a supermodel, so she's got a lot of great videos on beauty and so on, which can help a lot of young girls. And Dominic is the head teacher I was talking about, and Sam, they're both in the UK. All right, so now the Pathway program is where we've created a program for personal growth. So say you come to the app, you don't have a crisis or a problem you want to solve, but you just want to go on this personal growth journey because you know life is limited. You want to lead a happier life. So it's 5 stages, but you can use every different parts of it in any way you want. So the first step is a calm mind. All our resources for that are here. The breathing exercises, the meditations, lots of meditations are available, or here, guided audio meditations, and so on. So then you learn how to understand yourself. And this is something that nobody teaches us usually. Like, what is inquiry? Inquiry is just being curious. What's going on in my mind to make me feel this way? For example, if I'm angry and ask, why am I angry? My first response is, oh, it's because somebody else said this or that. I said, no, what's happened in my mind? Why did I react in that way? And then I can learn, for example, an expectation I had wasn't met. I felt hurt, and my hurt led to anger. And that expectation, then I can question where it came from, and so on. So this helps us really. And, teenagers, by the way, every line of this app has been shown to teenagers. And I've asked them, what is it about this that resonates with you, and what do you think we should leave out? And sometimes the most complex ideas, like looking without language, this girl, Rochelle from Texas, said, no, that's my favorite module, Manoj. You'll have to keep that in. And it's really saying that you can meet an emotion like stress and anxiety without thinking about it. And if you can meet an emotion in that way, it melts away. And you have to test it for yourself and see. But a lot of people say that that's one of their key modules in the app. Okay, so the third section helps you to understand how your mind works. We've talked about comparison. We've talked about conditioning. What about the need for external approval? We mentioned that briefly. Our inner boredom and emptiness is what drives our restlessness, which then drives our need to be on the phone all the time. And the more we stimulate our mind, the more stimulation we need. So if I get on the phone and I'm on TikTok for half an hour today, tomorrow I'll need to be on it for 45 minutes. And before I know it, and this is not uncommon, kids are on for 8-10 hours a day. Okay, then you can apply what you've learned so far to deal with all your emotions. By the way, 1 in 10 people suffer from depression, and that includes teens. 70% of them never look for help. So this is a way of helping yourself. It's been put together with psychologists and therapists from around the world, and it takes you on a step-by-step journey to recognize the depression and then put in place practical steps. We're not saying this, by the way, is a mental therapy app or takes the place of professionals at all. And then lastly, you can apply this to everything in life, whether it's having happier relationships, communicating with care, falling in love, dealing with feedback, modules on work, leadership, and so on. So plenty there to go on. So that's the Pathway program. Then this is just a quick way of looking for answers if you have a particular question. And then all our content on is nested here. So for example, if you look at our podcasts, we've got more than 100 podcasts on different subjects. So mental health, relationships, or you can search for a subject there. So for example, if you wanted to learn how to manage your emotions, all our podcasts on that are over there. And by the way, the content has been created in conjunction with therapists and coaches from around the world. Here's our library of short videos, more than 200 videos now. They're all with about a minute or two long. You've seen some of those already in the presentation. The Voices tab shows you all the videos from our coaches. Let me play one for you because I really like this one by Robin. She's a coach in Philadelphia.
Inspiration. My name is Robin L. Johnson, author and spiritual life coach. Today, I want to talk about happiness. Yes, happiness. How to obtain happiness is the thing I wish I would have learned when I was younger. I spent a lifetime thinking that happiness came from other people, not realizing until I'm in my 60s that happiness is an inside job. We're all seeking to be happy, and I believed initially that if I just did enough for others, that they would be happy, and in turn, they would make me happy. I always believed happiness came from outside of myself. I spent a lifetime wasting time, energy, and money, not understanding that happiness was something I needed to do for myself. So you're lucky. You've got the HappierMe app. Get started now. Don't wait like me until you're 60 to figure out how to make yourself happy.
So always brings a chuckle for everyone who's watching it. All right, so that's the explore section. All right, now our passion is to help make the world a better place. So all our videos link to that, whether it's dealing with climate change, racism, global health problems, or how to end conflict are here too. Now, in the menu on the top right is the HappierMe app for teens. It's very similar in structure, very different in content because all the examples are related to teenagers. There are a few features which are different, like this one called Teen Talk is conversations with teenagers from around the world. And you will be amazed at their innate wisdom. I'd encourage you all to listen to these and share them with the teenagers that you are teaching. They'll be bowled over as well. That young people, when given the opportunity, can discover in themselves this innate wisdom and intelligence and apply that to lead a much happier life. A few other things in the menu. There are testimonials from young people and others. You can read them. We plant a tree for every person who subscribes. You can sign up for our newsletter. And we also have in the adult program a partnership program. It's like an affiliate scheme that offers an income if you can share this with others. It's our way of spreading this work, keeping the prices down and not paying too much for advertising. Okay, so I'm going to pause there. I think I covered most things, but as I said, the app is free to download and to browse. So please feel free to have a good look around and feedback, help us to make it better. And if you're interested in a conversation on how we can bring it into your school for your teachers or your students, please drop me an email.